Let's jump right into this week's movie reviews. We'll start off with Beau Is Afraid, and we'll start with no spoilers. And when we get to the spoilers portion, I'm going to tell Seth to literally be like, just like mute us.
Yeah,
and we'll text you and come back.
This.
Because I genuinely don't want anything spoiled for you. Even though I don't think any of the spoilers would like ruin the movie, but it would ruin your reaction. So I want you to be completely blind for that. So we'll start spoiler free.
Cam already spoiled something on his Letterboxd review, and he didn't. You can literally spoiler. You can cover it on Letterboxd.
Did he? Oh, the giant. Okay,
yeah, the giant penis monster.
I saw that. I saw that.
Yeah. To be fair, like that's exactly what I mean. Like that spoils literally nothing in the movie, but that's like one of the shock value moments that like you're gonna be like, oh, but
I'd want to be surprised.
Right?
Now
Yeah. So Cam L, I tried to
penis
protect you from it because he texted it in the group chat. I'm like, delete that message because he can unsend messages in iPhone group chats. But
he doesn't use his brain.
Cam was the most recent one to watch it, but I think he's on dad duty right now, so I was going to go to him first, but instead I will pivot to George first. So you watched it, I think, Thursday night, I believe. So what are your thoughts on Beau Is Afraid? Again, starting completely spoiler-free, not ruining any of the crazy moments, just overall reactions and your score out of 5.
Yeah, I honestly don't even if when we get to spoilers, I don't even know what we're going to talk about. I don't know how to talk about this movie, and I said that in my TikTok review because it's like the truth. It's exactly like what everyone's describing, and I hate to repeat it because I feel like everyone is saying it's just 3 hours of like stress and paranoia. It's this character of Beau just going on a journey, trying to get to his mom, which I don't think that's a spoiler. Pretty sure that's in the trailer.
Yeah.
I'm so indifferent on this movie. I went with a 3 out of 5 because the first hour and a half I genuinely enjoyed. Like the first hour and a half, I was so in. I was like, this is gonna be without a doubt my favorite movie of the year. It was fast paced, it was chaotic. You're just kind of watching Joaquin Phoenix put on this really good performance as this panic attack induced character as he navigates this treacherous path of just shitty things. And it was really fast paced. It was really chaotic. I had no idea what was going on. I'm like, where the fuck is this movie going? And then this movie, it's one of those movies where you feel like it's going to end like 4 times. And there were genuinely like 4 or 5 instances where I was like, oh, the movie's going to wrap up. That 3 hours went by pretty fast. And then it just kept going. And it kept going and going and going. And by the end of it, I'm like, that was a 6-hour movie. I was like, that has to be 7 hours at least. And that's what kind of threw me. And then again, like I said in my TikTok review, I'm not smart enough to review this movie. I'm sure there's so much to it, so many layers, so many, rich thematic elements that I just didn't pick up on. And I think I do. I'm going to rewatch this movie. I want to, just because now I know how it pans out. Now I know what to expect. So I want to see if a second viewing will, maybe enhance my experience. Because the first time I saw it, I was just like, when is this thing going to end? Which sucks because, again, that first hour and a half, I was so invested. I really liked what was going on. It felt unpredictable. It kind of felt unsafe. It made me feel uncomfortable, which I enjoy in like I don't even know what genre this is, black comedy, psychological thriller, I guess. You could call this thing many things. But yeah, I'm going with 3 out of 5. I'm very indifferent about it. I'm usually not the biggest, proponent of, complaining about a runtime, but this is one where I really fucking felt it. And I think that really dampened my experience, especially towards the end of the movie.
To be fair, just to go back from what you said, when you said, like, you're not smart enough to understand this film?
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of people who I know, similar to yourself, have watched a lot of films and they understand film quite well. Even they've said that a lot of it is thematically shallow. So maybe you are smart enough. Maybe it's just the fact that you actually don't think there's much there.
Maybe there's just not a lot to it. I mean, listen, when you watch the movie, Seth, there's like, and this is no spoilers, but like there's like the last 2 sequences, essentially, like the last 2 scenes. There's just so much going on, so much that like pulls from previous things said in the movie, previous things you see in the movie. And the entire final sequence, I was sitting in a theater and I was like, how the fuck did we get here? So I don't know. Maybe it was shallow and there isn't much to interpret. Maybe I love that Family Guy quote where Peter's like, I do not like The Godfather. It insists upon itself. I don't know what that means, but I feel like Beau Is
That
Afraid.
sounds right for this.
Yeah,
film.
but Beau Is Afraid insists upon itself as well.
That's a perfect description. But yeah, no, like to what Seth was saying, and again, this is like zero spoilers whatsoever. I think the themes of this movie, what Ari Aster's trying to go for, I think are very surface level. Like I feel like I get everything he was going for. But in terms of the story, like the actual movie on screen itself, it's confusing to know what's reality and what's not. And I think even people that are smarter in their film analysis are like, they made stuff convoluted for just convoluted sake. But I think the themes are what people are saying is like more shallow, which I fully agree, which we'll get into when we talk spoilers, like what he's going for, I think are
But also,
pretty
I've seen
obvious.
so many. Sorry to interrupt because it
No
just
worries.
goes off of what we're saying. I've seen so many people, and I even said it in my TikTok review because I saw a lot of people say it, and I was like, oh, that kind of makes sense. It feels like one of those movies where you're watching it from the point of view of Beau, who is heavily medicated throughout the entire movie. He's clearly not all there in the head. So it's one of those things where it's like, well, the movie's getting weirder and more uncomfortable, and you're not understanding it as much as you maybe did in the first couple of scenes because Beau is like kind of just descending into madness and just he's losing it in the head. So as a viewer, you're seeing what he's seeing. And I was like, all right, that makes sense, but still fucking weird.
What did you give it out of 5?
A 3.
All right, 3 out of 5 from George, and you said you might need to rewatch, and you plan on rewatching it.
I want to rewatch, especially with the movie this long. Now that I know like when it ends and like what happens leading up to it, I think that'll like because when I watched it for the first time, I truly thought the movie was going to end like 4 times. So I was like, oh, okay. But now that I know when it ends and I know like what to expect, I want to see if I'll 1 feel the runtime as much, and 2 pick up on things that maybe I just looked past in my first viewing because this movie was a lot to take in. So I'm confident I missed like some important lines, some important conversations, or something.
For sure. And yeah, I didn't say the synopsis, so I'll go over that, even though George basically hit it on the head when he mentioned it, because it's really just a 1-sentence synopsis. A paranoid man embarks on an epic odyssey to get home to his mother. And that's pretty much the whole story. You just follow this man trying to get home to his mom. Basically, he visits her once a year on the anniversary of his dad's death, and this is literally like the first 5 seconds of the movie. Like that sets up the movie. Like, oh, it's the anniversary of his father's death. That's when he usually goes back and visits his mother. He has to go home. You follow his journey home, and that's how the whole movie gets set in motion. And you go on this 3-hour ride that is a dark comedy. I'd say is the main genre here, but yeah, there is that psychological thriller aspect. It's definitely nowhere near as horrific as previous Ari Aster movies, even though there's like horror elements in it for different respects. But like I'd mentioned to Cam, and I think Cam, you'd agree now that you've seen it, there's nothing scary really about this movie at all, right? Like even the biggest horror wusses in the world can see this and be completely fine. So yeah, you're muted, I believe.
That's my bad. Fuck me.
No, Cam was muted. Everyone was muted.
I was talking too. It's not even labeled as a horror on Letterboxd, which was super surprising. Also,
oh yeah, I see that now.
I never saw the trailer to Beau Is Afraid.
No, I definitely saw it, but they didn't really play it before any movies.
Did you see the teaser, the first one?
I don't know. I like walking into the movie, I was like thinking to myself, like I really like I don't know what I'm watching. Like I don't have like a frame of reference on like
Okay, you're unmuted now.
I don't have like a frame of reference on like what I'm like going into, which I thought was weird. What's up, Cam?
Yeah.
Sorry, yeah, I missed everything you guys said. So real quick before we get into spoilers, I came into the back half of Tyler mentioning just surface level themes, and I agree with that. Like this deals the only theme that I think they tried to really hit home, and it's because they explicitly talk about it, is his guilt that he's feeling of many different things. We can get into that, but this for me was just something and George said, I heard you also say that like you want to give it a rewatch. I never want to watch this movie again. And I think that's the biggest thing for me. Like I mentioned, like the second note I took is, I take my notes. The second note I took is like this movie, I think the camera work is incredible. I loved the camera work throughout the movie. I loved the directing. I think the acting was great. I think the dialogue was very good. But it just kind of wasn't anything. And it wasn't, I don't know who it was for, but it sure as hell wasn't for me. It wasn't like, some people, and I know Seth's favorite thing is like, just have fun with it. I think that is a pass of a movie like that. I think like is super kind of shit. But like, you know, if I have a good time, I'm not going to be as upset that I went and saw it. Like 30 minutes into this, I'm like sitting on my phone, just bored as hell. Even though it was weird, I was super bored. I didn't think it didn't get, and nothing happens for the first 30 minutes. The first 30 minutes is when the big change comes. We'll talk about that. That's at like the 30-minute mark because I noted it. Sorry, it's away. It's just, and I didn't find it funny. I didn't find it like smart. I don't know. I didn't like get anything from this other than the directing was very good in my opinion.
This is the first appearance your dog's made on the podcast. Shout out everyone watching on YouTube, but
Yeah, for
cute
sure.
dog.
Yeah, thank you. One time I was playing fetch with her, but
Oh yeah.
Just all up in your business right now, licking the
Yeah.
nose. But yeah, I just want to quickly mention that one note you just said is this is what I mentioned in my letterbox review. I think this is like, and again, I don't know the technicalities of screenwriting enough, but to me, this didn't feel like a general 3-act structure. It felt like more like a 4 or 5-act structure. But I think the first 45 minutes, if you don't like the first 45 minutes, there's no way it's going to go up from there. I think if you don't buy in immediately, it's going to go, you just keep going downhill because I think it gets progressively weirder and more bizarre. So the fact that when you texted the group chat and you're like, this is just weird. I don't know. I don't like what I'm watching. So early on, I was like, yeah, he's not going to like this. Because if you don't like that first 45 minutes, I think the next one just gets a little weirder. And it just keeps getting weirder and something that
I don't
would be
think
more
it gets
disliking.
weirder, though. Like, to be... So, let's just... We'll get into spoilers. There
All right,
are
but,
things that...
Seth, I want you to disappear, and I'll text you in the group chat when you should come back. I don't want you to get spoiled at all. All right, goodbye.
So, am I good to just say what I was going to say? Or is there anything
spoilers
you
can
want-
start
Okay.
now. Except hold on. What did you give it out of 5?
Wow.
Yeah, so I gave it a 3 out of 100, so a 1.5 out of 5.
All right, and then before you start, I gave it a 6.7 out of 10 because I didn't say that yet. So 3.5 stars. All
Sure.
right, now go ahead. Spoilers now.
Yeah, so the first 30 minutes, like nothing happens, and the 30-minute mark is when his mother is revealed dead. So that's like when I started. That's when I thought the movie was going to start picking up and maybe I'd get more enjoyment. I don't think that like necessarily like after the first 45, 50 minutes, an hour was all that weird compared to the first. And I think more so I was just like Joaquin Phoenix's ass was just in my face for like 10 minutes. There's a naked man stabbing people. There was a man hiding above his bath and then falls on him. And there's a like it's not 15 minutes, but it's like 3-minute sequence of them just rolling around in this bath trying to get out. I thought that was the weirdest part. Like even when we get into the giant dick monster, I thought that was the weirdest part was the first 45 minutes. That's not saying the rest of the movie isn't weird. That's just the kind of stuff that I'm like, what the fuck am I watching right now? Whereas in the future, it's more like psychedelic weird and not like naked man stabbing people weird. So, whatever camp you're in, you may find it more weird or not. But I don't know. It just you're not wrong, though. If you don't buy in the first 45 minutes, it's not going to be a pleasant watch for you.
Yeah, because the first 45 minutes takes place in Skid Row, Los Angeles. So Beau lives in an apartment in the middle of just the homeless encampments in LA. Violence everywhere, trash everywhere, drugs, homeless people, suspicious people at every turn, which I don't know. I enjoyed that setting. I thought it was very chilling, intense. But from there, you get what Cam said. You get his mom is not alive. She's dead. That's the big change that happens about 30 minutes. Then Beau freaks out, and we realize Beau Is Afraid is literally like I'm not going to say the perfect title because I like Disappointment Boulevard better, but I'm going to say perfect title in terms of what it means for him because he's agoraphobic. He doesn't like going outside. He's has anxiety. He has PTSD. He has trauma. He has mommy issues. He's always worried about side effects of everything. Like you saw, like when he flashed back to when he was a kid, he like didn't eat certain foods. He's like, oh, that has like red food coloring in it and that can cause cancer. So he's like anything that could go wrong, he's like worried about. So like we see in the beginning, one of the big conflicts is like his therapist says you have to take these pills with water, which is like just a standard thing everyone says with like pills and doesn't really mean like basically he takes it as like if he doesn't swallow water, if he doesn't swallow water with his pill, he's literally gonna die. So then he starts freaking out and he has to get out of his apartment, run across the street to a bodega or whatever to get a water. And so the first 30 minutes, we find out his mom's dead, not alive, who he was trying to get home to because he missed his flight. So basically he would have been home, and he gets really guilty because like, damn it, I would have been home and been with my mom. And then about 45 minutes in, when he's frantically running around Skid Row, Holly Flax from The Office hits him with her like big like UPS truck size thing, like a big van, hits him, almost basically kills
Holly
him.
Flax.
Yeah, and that's pretty much the conclusion of that first act. So we have like the two big conflicts of the first act is his mom's dead and Holly Flax hits him with the car. And then from there, we transition into Act 2. What's
real
up?
quick, the most I laughed in this movie, I wrote it down, is when he's on the phone with this is the one time like I audibly laughed. It was very funny. He's on the phone with the guy who answered his mom's phone. He's like, I think she's dead or whatever. And then he's like, call back. You probably have the wrong number. Just call back. It's not going to be right. And he calls back and he's like, I'm so sorry, man. That's like the one thing he says on the phone. That had me dying. It was so funny.
That was a hilarious moment because he's like, the UPS guy who calls him tells him he found his mom dead on the floor. He realizes Beau is not really all there in the head. So he's like, hey, man, don't worry. Like, you probably just called the wrong number. Your mom's not actually dead. Just hang up the phone, call your mom. She's going to answer. Everything will be fine. And he called back.
Like, I have this number saved.
Yeah. That was so funny.
That was good. And then, so we jump into Act 2 at that point, and as I keep going through kind of this movie, feel free to stop me whenever. But this point for Act 2, we're at Holly Flax's home, and basically we find out that her and her husband take in different people in need and give them medical care, rehabilitation care. We don't see a ton of their other patients, but we kind of get glimpses that, there's some PTSD people that used to serve in the war that they kind of take care of, which kind of repays a similar debt because their son fought in a war, so they kind of feel like they can kind of help other veterans in need and just other people. And Beau kind of fits that billing of because he, in their eyes, was like, a homeless guy from Skid Row who doesn't really have a lot going for him. So they took him in, gave him medical care after they hit him with their car, and tried to get him all better because he had some serious stab wounds. He had some serious bumps and bruises from that car wreck. So then basically the next 45 minutes to an hour, we're at their house where he's just getting rehabilitative care. They have a daughter who's really, really into drugs. Their whole family's into drugs. They kind of pop the pills like desserts. And this is where I just really feel like the surface level, like, pharmaceutical industry is taking over the world and helping everyone treat their disease just, like, really shoved down their throat, or, like, they just kept popping pills, like, before everything they did in their life. And we see that they have, I don't know if it was a son or, like, people, like, they were just watching after that, like, stayed in the yard in those RVs.
No,
like,
that was
PTSD people.
That was a friend of his or someone he was deployed with, and yeah, they're just watching after him. I think he was probably injured when his son died or something like that.
Yeah, super weird moments. And basically the whole time he's there, he wants to leave to go home to get to his mom, and they kind of keep holding him there and saying, like, no, you're not healthy enough yet, which partially felt weird because they were, like, holding him from getting back to his mom. But then at the same time, like, he was severely, like, injured. So maybe they were just, like, truthfully, like, you can't really go right now. You have, like, stab wounds galore. And then this act kind of concludes with their daughter drinks paint because they're all just freaking weird. She drinks paint, kills herself. Holly Flax tries to do CPR on her and drinks the paint out of her. It's just a very weird scene. And then from there, they all blame Beau for it because she, like, painted Beau's name on the wall. And then Beau basically has to run away because that PTSD guy that's staying in their yard starts to literally hunt him down like he's Rambo and chases him through the woods. And that kind of concludes Act 2. So is there anything we want to talk about with that?
I know he's crazy, like Beau's on drugs and probably schizophrenic or just like not all there, right? But you're clearly wearing an ankle monitor, man. You're wearing an ankle monitor.
Yeah, I mean, like, this is our special, like, diagnostic health monitor.
Yeah, that's how they track him, obviously. But I know he's not all there, but it's like, come on.
Yeah. So then from there, that concludes kind of the Holly Flax scenes of the movie, and we get to the Act 3 where he goes in the middle of the woods. And this is the part that I think a lot of people saw in the trailer, which is where there's a play going on in the woods, and there's that whole, like, the gif and the scenes that everyone sees where it's like Beau walking in the fall, the spring, the winter, like all these things. This is where it gets really psychedelic. He's in the woods. There's a play going on. Cam, what do you got on this?
Yeah, this is where I took the note of a man dressed as a ladybug just kissed Joaquin Phoenix. Never thought you'd see that, huh? So
this is the kind of analysis you only get on the ReelTok podcast. But this is where basically he, like, So in the description of this movie, they say it's like an odyssey for him trying to get home. And this is where it like really hammers that home, where it's like literally like the book The Odyssey, or the story The Odyssey, where it's like he's just going on this trek in his journey and saying like he's down to his last dollar and he could either feed himself or he could go see a play, and then he decides to see this play, and it's just weird. And this is where it's just so bizarre, because then this is where for me the blend between reality and what's just completely in his head got really confusing for me, because we have this whole play. And then from there, we kind of figure out, like, this is where we got flashbacks of his previous life, too, when he was a kid, and he kind of meets this girl that he kind of gets his first crush on. And that girl, they're on a cruise ship with his mom, and he meets this girl, he gets a crush on her, and basically this girl's like, wait for me, Beau, because she has to get, her mom takes her off the cruise. And she's
takes
like,
her off the cruise, which,
yeah.
Like, what?
How do you do that,
really?
really?
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, she's like, wait for me, and he takes it completely literally and just doesn't have contact with a female for, like, 55, 60 years, or however old he is, because he's literally just waiting for this woman. But that's just the kind of guy he is. He's just so weird and concerned with everything.
Real men wait.
Yeah, real men wait for the girl you meet on the cruise. And this whole act kind of concludes then with that guy who was chasing him through the woods finally getting there, shooting up a ton of people. Like, I think he threw a grenade or something, unless I'm misremembering things.
He was Ramboing, really, for sure.
But, like, for me, like, how much of that was that just, like, 100% real? Like, I don't know. Did he literally just kill, like, 50 people in the woods?
The second he got to the woods with those people, I was like, where? Because when they started, like, narrating the play, and it was, like, Beau's life, and he was, like, watching it, and they were like, oh, well, he's standing up, and, like, Beau starts standing up.
And then, but, yeah, it's like narrating a play, and then it goes into... the narration ends with him going to a play, and he's watching another narration of that play. So I wrote down that it was playception.
Perfect way to describe it.
Also, the angel that was like in the sky,
spooky
in the play,
spooky.
Bro, her monologue went on for like 25 minutes at least.
That's the problem. That none of these were like short. It's a 4 or 5 part like movie, like Tyler said. None of them are short. Like, it's not like you get through, like, you're right. And for me, it went way too long. But I will say this is my favorite, like, we'll call act of the movie. This is where I thought I was like buying into it. And I'm like, I think we can get something here. I think like there's something here that I'm enjoying. And then after that, it just went back to me not.
The movie, that's the play scenes are where the movie like kind of lost me. I was like invested in them at first. I was like, okay, it's cool. It's just another leg of his journey. He's meeting these weird people, blah, blah, blah. And then he sits down to watch this play and it starts, and that's where it kind of just gets off the rails. And I'm like, what the fuck are we watching? Yeah,
and we like see his dad there at the play, and like that had me confused too. Like his dad showing up, and then because this is all happening when they said like they're narrating his life for the play, and it's like the man stands up in the audience and he sees like his father, and I don't know, weird. And from there, we should also mention this is where the like viral kid is, and he wasn't in the movie as much as I thought he was, for one, and two, that kid looks weird. No offense to him. Yeah, but like, is it one of those things where it's like an uncanny valley because we saw him on the poster for so long? I think that's what kind of really adds to it, because I think he is a pretty normal looking kid, but he just is so uncanny because for so long we all thought he was not a real kid, and we thought he was just a CGI guy, which is actually just completely hilarious that it literally took until the premiere of the movie for anyone on film Twitter to be like, oh shit, it's not just like the average person like us who like didn't know he was real. Like even the biggest film buffs on Twitter were all like, oh, this guy's real. And it's like, I wonder what that kid's thinking. Like, just like seeing like
that kid posted a TikTok. He posted a TikTok literally saying, "I'm real, guys. Don't worry."
Yeah. And side note, real quick, like people got really mad at him for saying his 4 favorite films were like all movies from like 2010. It's like the kid's like legitimately 17. Like, what do you expect him to be like? Citizen Kane is like his favorite movie ever. Yeah. So then that wraps up that act, and at this point, this is where I'm pretty much bought out of the movie at this point. I'm really confused where the line between real and fake is. From here, Beau finally gets home after that guy comes, kills a bunch of people in the woods, and ends up killing himself because he like trips, and then the machine gun goes off and just shoots into his body. And like that's where it was just so bizarre that I was like, none of this can be real, right? Like that's just such a weird thing to happen. He gets home to his house, to his mother's funeral, and he's kind of just chilling in the house after the funeral and the services are over. His mom's there with the decapitated head because the chandelier fell on her head. And the girl who he met on the cruise ship shows up to the funeral, and basically we find out she worked for the mom up until like a month ago, or this is what she's saying. She's like, oh, I worked for your mom, and this is how we kind of kept in touch. And then they finally reconnect. And we should mention that Beau has never had sex in his life, because the story of how his dad died was his dad lost his virginity to his mom and impregnated his mom. And the very first time his dad came, he died from a heart arrhythmia.
Murmur.
Yeah, heart
murmur or something.
And that's the way his grandpa died too. It was like his dad, his grandpa, his great grandpa. They all died the first time they had sex, is what the story was. So George, what do you hate about that scene?
The scene of like his mom telling that story, I think is shot so well. Like, it was such a cool shot where like the lens is like right up against her face, and the light just kind of keeps going around. It keeps going from like blue to light to red. And I'm like, I wish she was saying anything else right now.
Dude, she says inside of me 15 times. And at the 13th, I was like, it's not. I think what this movie is like, hey, this is funny because you're uncomfortable. Yeah. And that's just not humor that really I laugh at. I think if you do, that's fine. Like if you like poop and fart, like I think humor and puke, that's not for me. And this is just kind of that.
I told me and Victoria noticed this after when we walked out of the theater. We kind of both said it. The humor was so scattered in terms of like what people were laughing at. There was not one joke that made like my entire theater laugh. Every joke had like a different bunch of people laughing, and I thought that was very odd.
I think the weird thing for the humor for me is there was times I did laugh out loud at the phone call was funny. I laughed at the part in the play when the guy just takes the gun out of like the speaker whenever all this shit goes down. But I think the thing like for me, which like I have nothing against like not film bros, but the more cinephile side of things, like, you know, the A24 lovers, the people that like fringe movies. I feel like a lot of people in my theater, because I was at an early screening, so it was packed, were laughing because they're like in on the joke. They're like, oh, this is so like different and cultured of me to laugh at this moment. I was like, it was like not a funny moment, but I think they were laughing because they're like, oh, Ari Aster, you did it again, sir. I'm like, just stop, just get the balls out your mouth. And then so
I will say on the laughing side, my theater, like you're exactly right. They were uproaring at some things, but not others. And it would be like 4 people uproaring here, 3 people uproaring here at different points. But then there was one guy who was just snoozing down next to me, six seats down, just, and I'm like, someone wake this guy up.
I loved the guy who was sitting in front of me because he like seemed like the type that him and his wife go to movies. Like if there's an early screening, they'll try and go, but they didn't seem like they were there because they're like an A24 Ari Aster fan. And there's so many times like all I can see is his hand reactions, but he would just like be sitting there. And he's like he just like look at his wife. He's like, what's going on here? I'm like, oh, this guy's in for something. Because it was like early on, he was just shaking his head. He's like, what is this? I'm like, oh god, this is gonna be fun to watch this guy. But so this act the girl from the cruise shows up, and kind of expectedly they have sex. It felt basically the tension in that scene very much felt like, oh, this is where it's going to be going.
This is the most uncomfortable sex scene that's consensual I've ever seen in a movie.
Good caveat to put in there, but yeah. So there's a sex scene. We're all like, oh my gosh, it's tense because is Beau gonna die? All of the patriarchs of his family died. Big twist. He doesn't die. She dies when he comes inside of her. So something about the scene in that family is just
killer. Of like, oh, this is the big twist. She dies, and I was like, great. But then there's another.
So not only does she die, she like dies and like is paralyzed, like frozen, and then she's like completely movementless. And then basically like from there we realize, and this is kind of transitions into the 5th act. His mom's standing in the door. She's alive, and she's like, what is wrong with you? And then like basically all these like kind of henchmen that work for his mom come in and like grab the dead body and just drag this naked corpse out of the room. And then from there we realize his mom's alive, and this is where things just go completely off the rails because we find out basically we get a flashback of when he's like in a bathtub as a kid, and his mom throws something up in the attic and is like, never go up there. So there's always something up in there, and obviously it's like very symbolic for just like throwing something in an attic and just locking it away and just saying, just like, don't address that for your whole life. And so then at this point,
but it's his brother, right?
Yeah,
his brother's up there, and then also his dad.
Yeah,
which is
his brother and his dad, and his dad's a big penis. So
yes.
big cock monster. The boner, you could say, is up in the attic, and he's got like spider arms that are like sharp daggers, and because basically go ahead. I don't know.
Yeah, so people like I really touched on this, and it was a lot for clicks just to say big penis monster like 15 times, and it's more for clicks, to be quite honest. But people really hit home that like it's like, oh, his dad's a dick, and it's like, yeah, that makes sense because his mom says that's your dad up there, so like you get it, right? And I think that would have worked if this movie was funny, like to me at least. There were people that laughed. I think that would have worked for me if I had thought this movie was funny. But up until it's weird when you get into that horror comedy thing of you're like trying to be suspenseful, but also trying to be funny. Because it just the genres don't work in that sense. And I in my opinion. And so I think this would have worked better and I would have been okay with it more if it made me laugh. But this is kind of where the movie I was like, okay, I'm out. It's not for me. I'm out. Big penis.
So
monster.
the big penis monster's in the attic, and literally like it's like for the 5th time, like you thought he's dead, but he's back again. The guy from the Holly Flax house chasing him with the machine gun shows up again, and this is where I was just really like, okay, I'm once again just simply don't know what's real and what's not. He shows up in the attic, tries to kill Beau. The penis monster like stabs him through the head, kills him. So finally he's like dead, and then Beau basically falls down the attic, and she's like, "You see, this is what I protected you from." Basically, his brother eating from a dog bowl and water bowl in the attic, and his dad being a huge dick, literally. Anything we want to touch on that before we get to the final ending? I feel like we spent a lot of time on Beau.
Is this like mommy issues movie or a daddy issues movie? Like it just I don't know.
I think it's a mommy issues movie that's and a lot of her dealings with him is a result of his daddy. So it's like it's a whole family trouble.
Sure.
But yeah, because we basically realized like his mom lied to him his whole life to try and make him like not have sex and control him. And she's just been very controlling in his life. Always kind of thought he was a loser. A lot of Freudian mommy issues in this. And then from there this is like, I don't know. We get to the 5th act here, which is another rug pull once again, where it's basically a Truman Show style reveal, which is again where I'm for the 17th time like, what here has been real and what hasn't? Because he's been in an arena. He's in an arena floating away on this boat, trying to get away from his mother, who he choked out and slammed through a table and runs away from his house. Basically, we find out that his therapist the whole time was working with his mom and telling her everything. And it kind of seemed like the whole thing was his mom faked her whole death to basically see what his reaction would be like and to see if he was upset enough, urgent enough to get home. How much did he actually love her? Just a very weird thing to do. And he chokes her, slams her through a table, runs away, gets in this boat, sails away. And then basically all those lights come on when he's sailing away. His motor goes out. We realize he's in the middle of a big Coliseum-style auditorium where it looks like it's some dystopian futuristic trial going on between his mother suing him or trying to get him killed for basically not loving him enough, and then Beau has like this 1-800 defense lawyer it was funny how like basically it's like you can't afford a real lawyer, so basically he gets like a cheap mic so no one can hear him, so Truman Show-esque in terms of everyone just watching him like this whole time. Like I don't know when he was in that arena and when he wasn't, because she makes comments like like, oh, your fake little keys in your fake little apartment. And of course, Holly Flax passes him a note that says, like, don't incriminate yourself. He has an ankle bracelet. So clearly he's been under some kind of police-esque watch this whole time, supposedly. Or maybe it was once she hit him with the van, that's when they threw him in this prison type thing. So maybe the whole LA stuff was real with him in Skid Row. And then once he gets hit with the car, that's when he becomes in prison. And none of that's real because he's just on a drug trip inside of this prison cell. This is where I'm just completely lost for the movie, because we find out he's basically been in this holding cell on trial from his mom for not loving him enough. Where do you guys think, like, what here's real and what's not?
I have no idea.
Yeah, honestly, I wasn't even thinking that this was like a Truman Show type thing. I truly thought that was just like you kind of just opened my eyes to a whole different way of looking at this movie right there, Tyler. I'm not gonna lie.
Wow. Damn.
That's what I'm saying. I'm not smart enough to interpret this film because I knew the ankle tracker was that's where I was like, okay. And then the don't incriminate yourself note, that Holly Flack passed. I was like, okay, something deeper is going on. But then once we got past the play scene and we got to the mom's house, I was like, okay, is she like actually alive? Like, is this actually happening? Like, and then obviously the giant penis monster. That's where I was like, there's no way this is happening. So at the end of the movie, I was kind of sitting there. I was like, all of that had to have been in this dude's head. Like, he is not taking too well to the death of his mother, and he's like bugging out. He's feeling guilty because he feels like she died before he was able to like truly like make up with her and like be on good terms with her. But wow, now I want to watch this movie again, Tyler, because you truly just opened my eyes to a lot.
This not to touch on like what's real and what's not, but this ending, it just took so long. It took so damn long, I thought, and like the trial scene just kept going and kept going. And it felt like for me, every scene just kept going and kept going. But I thought after we got Penis Monster, it was almost over. And then there's like 10 minutes or 15 minutes left in the film. Yeah, it was too much. And just to touch on like other movies with like what's real and what's not, and with Joaquin Phoenix, Joker like is like a big like what's real, what's not. Did he kill himself when he got in the fridge? Whatever. But it feels like at least that movie has like a cohesive plot and like ending kind of, and this thing just isn't cohesive at all, in my opinion. And I think that's kind of where it falls apart. So it's not fun guessing what's real and what's not because it's not cohesive in my opinion.
That's fair. And to wrap it up of kind of where this movie ends then is he's on this trial for not loving his mom enough. The jury and the crowd's all convinced that he did not love his mom enough. So the judge, jury, and executioner, he's kind of in this boat. It eats him like a little, those flowers that, just like come up and just eat people. Eats him. Beau's dead. He dies to end the movie, or at least that's what we're led to believe. Like, I mean, he doesn't come back that he's alive, but I just don't know what's real or what's not. So he dies here. And then for me, like, sometimes rating movies are arbitrary. So for me, I was like, that's a 3 out of 5 movie. But when he was in the auditorium scene, I was like, if Ari Aster ends this movie by like starting the credits as people are walking out of the auditorium and then just has that play while like we're supposed to be walking out of the theater, I'm like, I'll throw him an extra 0.5 stars because for some reason I think I would like that. I was like, if he just has all the people walking out of the movie auditorium when everyone's walking out of the theater auditorium, I think that'd be a cool little touch. And he did that, so I was like, oh, I'll bump it up to 3.5. Just kind of like the little end credits there. But this is a weird movie. Is there anything else we want to touch on it? We went pretty deep into the whole story of this, but that's about as deep as I could personally go because I just don't know for a lot of this stuff. I think, yeah. Is there anything else you guys want to add?
My last note, Tyler, is when he strangles his mom, he stops strangling her, and then she like stands there for a second, then throws herself into the into like the fish tank or whatever it was, and I made a comment saying flop, we're going the other way. So that was a
which kind of makes sense when you see that she was actually alive. So maybe she like wanted to make him believe he was dead.
Yeah. So
George, any final thoughts?
No, that I
I'll
think
let
we
Seth
just
know he
about
can
wrapped
come back.
everything up.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a bridge
Wasn't
the
for
gap
me.
for while
Wasn't for
Seth's
me.
unmuting himself. So no more spoilers we'll talk about here. But yeah, it's quite the trip of a movie. It's a weird one for sure. And,
Seth, can you hear us?
Yeah, he's back. Yeah, we're done with spoilers.
When does he get this? When do you get it?
May 18th, I think.
I think
Okay,
your
that's
real
not
beef
too
should be
delayed.
with A24. They're always the company that doesn't get it out
it's always A24.
to Europe.
Which for years they've had that indie vibe where you could put it aside, but I think at this point we can't really say A24 doesn't have the money to be distributing these movies worldwide at the same time. But yeah, and then one final note, which again, no spoilers, so don't worry, Seth, is I saw this movie in IMAX because that's what like the early screening was. I think it's in IMAX. I'm never gonna say don't see a movie in IMAX 'cause I think it's always a cool experience, but sure, this movie looked pretty, but I didn't gain much from the IMAX experience. I don't know, Cam or George, if you saw it in IMAX, but I really don't think this is a movie you need to see in IMAX.
I don't know if you need to see it in IMAX, but like I said, the camera work was my favorite part, so I enjoyed it.
Right, camera worked great, but I don't think I gained anything from like the Uber speakers and the stadium seating of this crazy screen. I was like, this does not need to be an IMAX movie, but whatever. A24's most expensive movie to date. Ari Aster's taking a big swing, and we're all mixed on it. Cam's the lowest, George is a little lower than me, but I'm still not that high. But I will say I'm 100% all for giving directors a big budget and just giving them full creative control and just letting them make something like Babylon, Beau Is Afraid. Even if it's a miss for me, I just love seeing something that's just pushing the boundaries and being weird. So I at least appreciate movies for like this for existing.